first speaker is Pete Paphides. He's one of the UK's most renowned music journalists and writers, and he was a long-time rock critic for The Times and contributed as a high-profile writer to virtually every other magazine. I think over the years he has earned the respect and trust of many of the major artists that he has interviewed and reviewed. And the reasons that musicians trust a journalist or writer like Pete is a combination of expertise, authentic passion for their music, and humility, all brought together in one package. So I'd like you to please, if you would, welcome Pete to the stage. Pete.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you for joining us. Before I continue, I'd just like to play a piece of music by one of my favourite new bands. It's a debut single. It's out in 2 weeks' time. Can we play this preferably as loud as possible?
You do nothing for me. You are a paper chaser when you wanna be a shaker maker. Yeah, you tell yourself, but have you seen yourself? Yeah, you tell yourself, but have you seen yourself lately? You do nothing for me. So give the spotlight to me. Thank you for indulging me. That was a new single by a group called Trampoline, out in 2 weeks' time.
and picking up a lot of attention on Radio 1 and XFM, I'm happy to say. I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about my friendship with this band. It's a slightly odd friendship. I'm 44, I'm married with children. They're from Swansea, they're in their early 20s, and they have a somewhat questionable personal hygiene regimen. But I first saw them play live in front of an audience at the Dublin Castle. I don't know how many of you know that venue, but the audience outnumbered just about the amount of bar staff in the venue. And my first impression was a slightly bewildered one. They seemed too good to be true. Their singer, Jack Jones, was already a rock star, really. He did things on a guitar whilst jumping up and down or rolling around on the floor that Jack White has to stand still and concentrate a little bit to do. They were not quite the finished article, but they were astonishingly good for a group who were third on the bill at a venue where, on a nightly basis, bands square up to the enormous indifference of a world in which music is more readily accessible than ever before. Three things I found out about Trampoline that night. First of all, they share an incredibly pokey flat in Hornsey, North London. Secondly, they live exclusively on couscous. It's very, very cheap couscous. And the only reason they'd managed to keep going for long enough to become this tight was a peculiar byproduct of Jack's illness. Jack suffers, I say suffers, I've never actually heard him complain about it, but he suffers from Crohn's. Now, for those of you who don't know, Crohn's is a frequently painful and sometimes life-threatening condition in which the body's immune system attacks the gastrointestinal tract. Now, Jack's Crohn's has prevented him from holding down regular work, which in turn has allowed him to apply the discipline of a day job to his playing and songwriting. Put simply, this is what he's been doing every day, all day, for the whole time I've known him, and sometime before that as well. Occasionally, he finds himself called in for an interview in which his suitability for work is assessed. He has to produce a letter from his GP, which is usually enough to afford him a stay of execution for a while. And sometimes Jack tells me about these meetings. Depending on who you get that day, he says staff at the job centre don't always understand what they're dealing with. One interviewer thought that Crohn's was a stress-related illness. After taking down many notes, he reread what he had written, had a good long think, and told him he could try and enroll him onto a course of Pilates lessons. Pilates is not known to be a great cure for Crohn's. The tone of the interviews lately, says Jack, has been changing. On his last interview, they tried to make him work in a local toy factory, which in a way I was quite encouraged by because I didn't actually think there were any toy factories left in this country. I'm lucky to have been able to check in with this band from the sidelines. And the thing that struck me about them is just how few of these bands there are left anymore. Many commentators before me have drawn attention to a class-based polarity opening up in the pop charts. Is pop too posh? Asked The Observer in March this year. During a heated debate in the paper, writer and Spotify music consultant Rob Fitzpatrick contended that pop was as level a playing field as it had always been, whilst on the other side, another great writer, Dorian Lynskey, made the point that, quote, it's hard to imagine Pulp, who formed in 1980, surviving long enough to write common people under the current benefits system. So who was right? Well, Rob made the very good point that the democratization of technology has allowed everyone in his words. Big Nasty or Scream or Tiny Temper don't need to waste years of their life on the dole waiting for their muse to strike. And for the self-contained artist happy to swap band for garage band, I don't know if you saw what I did there, these are indeed exciting times. Does it matter that working class bands have stopped coming through? Does it matter that a disproportionate amount of actual British bands who have achieved mainstream success in recent years, Mumford & Sons, Florence and the Machine, the Vaccines, the Maccabees, have emerged from fee-paying schools? I don't have a problem with any of these artists any more than I would begrudge Nick Drake his posthumous stardom for the fact that he went to Marlborough College. So, what's the problem? Talking to Q magazine last month, Billy Bragg highlighted opportunities that the dole once afforded to working class musicians seeking to break free of their parents' expectations. You were breaking with the whole concept you'd been through school with, that you were going to pass these exams and get a trade, said Billy, before adding, I don't think Marcus Mumford's mum ever worried about him getting a trade. I think the point here relates to a multiplicity of voices, a multiplicity that I feel was sometimes lacking, especially when it comes to actual bands. In that Observer debate, Dorian said, I don't hear many newcomers with the socially insurgent outsider energy of the Smiths or Manic Street Preachers. To that list, I would like to add the Specials, Steel Pulse, Jesus and Mary Chain, Madness, or indeed the band who, in their fearsome, feral infancy, Trampoline most remind me of, Oasis. Recalling the creation of Oasis's Definitely Maybe, Noel Gallagher said, I was on the dole and I had fuck all going for me. I was writing about escaping. In 2013, escape is harder than it's ever been. My worry is that a system which once used to stretch aspiring bands to breaking point is now breaking their resolve before we ever hear from them. And it's not a worry that's just restricted to working class bands or bands who miraculously use their job seekers allowance as an unofficial enterprise allowance payment. For any group that manages to stay together long enough to make a record whilst holding down a job, the gulf between hobby and full-time job is too vast to negotiate. A short while ago, I was asked by AIM, the Association of Independent Music, to curate a bill as part of their AIM Awards warm-up shows. I asked, and I was amazed I asked Scritti Politti to headline. I was amazed that they accepted. The opening band was a group called Trapped Mice. They're from Edinburgh, and they've created one of my very favourite albums of the past 12 months. The contrast between what Scritti Politti had achieved and what Trapped Mice were likely to achieve was quite poignant. Both groups made literate, head-spinning melodic pop music, but one of them had made it in an era in which even independent bands could get by on the proceeds of their record sales. An era in which a major label could take a punt on a group with relatively limited commercial prospects and sometimes find themselves surprised to see that group achieve worldwide success, which of course is what happened to Scritti Politti. By contrast, after 3 years together, this was Trapped Mice's first show south of Edinburgh, with all of the band holding down day jobs, excuse me. Building up an audience by touring had not been an option, and without the money accrued from touring, giving up their day jobs remains an impossibility. All of which is bad news for music and bad news for the economy. I'm not saying we should be making it easy for young people to form bands and secure recording contracts. Sacrifice and application are part of the story of every great musician. Young talent needs to be nurtured. You only have to look at the cross-class alumni of the Brit School, Amy Winehouse, Adele, KTB, Jessie J, to realise that. But there is, when all's said and done, just one Brit School. And this is why the work that youth music is doing is so important. Potential needs attention from people who can help it germinate into great art. The more great art and great artists we bring to fruition, the more revenue we generate for the creative industries. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a music writer, and the reason I achieved my ambition was that other people believed in me. I wrote fanzines, which, as a result of pure luck really, ended up in the hands of people who were in a position to nurture me and offer me advice. I don't think it's enough to say that talent will out and cite already successful musicians as proof, because we never hear of the people who might have made it, but ultimately gave up when they decided that the odds were too stacked against them. Growing up in Birmingham, London seemed like another planet to me, certainly not a place for unsophisticates like myself. And I think it's still like that for most young musicians toiling away in obscurity. Of course, in 2013, it would be naive to expect the benefit system to show any lassitude towards anyone convinced they could be the new Liam Gallagher, Dizzy Rascal or John Lydon. And with the major label development deal almost consigned to a more prosperous era, that's why organisations such as Youth Music offer a lifeblood, a rehearsal space here, studio time there, but also the use of older, more experienced ears, some feedback. There is something, finally, that young musicians across all genres do wonderfully well, and it does not last forever. When you're young, you're tribal, naive, iconoclastic, often obnoxious, and you think that you know everything. And for reasons that skilled musicologists have spent entire lifetimes failing to work out, these are all perfect preconditions for making the most incredible music, from White Riot to Pretty Vacant, from Supersonic to Fix Up Look Sharp. I really believe there is more where that came from, and that's the other reason I'm here. It's mind-blowing what can happen when someone outside of your immediate bubble, preferably someone with a really great address book, shows you a little belief and gives you some of their time. And the potential results benefit all of us. Thanks.